Hey everybody, this is the Drive On Podcast, where we talk about issues affecting veterans after they get out of the military. I'm your host, Scott DeLuzio, and now let's get on with the show. This is part one of a two-part episode where I talk to Wes Black, a soldier who served with my brother in both Iraq and Afghanistan. We got to talking for over 2 hours, and while it was all great stuff, I thought that it was a little bit long for just one episode. What we talked about was really good, and so I didn't want to cut out any of it. Instead, I'm going to break the conversation down into two parts. The first you'll hear in just a second in this episode, where we talk a lot about Wes's military career and some medical issues that he's going through. And the second will come out next week on September 3rd, where we talk a bit about my brother Stephen. And so without further delay, let's get on with the show. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into the Drive On Podcast. Today my guest is Wes Black, who served in Iraq and Afghanistan with my brother. Wes is here to tell his story about his time in the military and then serving his community later on as a firefighter and some of the struggles that he's kind of had along the way. Wes, I don't want to give away too much information about you here. So why don't you tell us a little about yourself and your military service, when you joined and all that kind of stuff, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. I enlisted in November of 2003. I was a student at Norwich University. It's actually where I met your brother Steve the first time. Not 2003. I met him in 2004, but I enlisted in 2003 in the Vermont Army National Guard. I went to basic training that following summer, came back, did another semester at college, and then we got the warning order that we were going to Ramadi, Iraq. So we deployed January of 2005, went down to Camp Shelby. We did 6 months of train up, and then I was in country June or July of 2005 in Ramadi, Iraq, and we served until June of 2006. Came back. I did a lot of. I tried to go back to college. Didn't work out for me. And then I actually worked for the Vermont Army National Guard as a active duty for specialized work. ADSW is what we call it. So it's a Title 32 order. So it's like active duty, but it's for a year long. What we would call a tour. So I did that for a couple of years. I worked for the Army Mountain Warfare School. As a supply person, I was, helping in the supply room. Every once in a while, they'd let me sneak out, and I'd kind of go up and help with the training, setting it up and taking it down. But I was never an instructor or anything like that. And then I did a little bit of time for working for the unit when we were getting ready to deploy to Afghanistan. And then in 2010, we deployed to Paktia province, Afghanistan. And we deployed in October of 2009. Went to JRTC, then we deployed to Afghanistan. We were in country like January, February of 2010. And we left again, I think, in January, Scott? Our brigade?
It was somewhere, towards the end of the year, maybe.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, so I got home from that, did a little bit more time, bumming around the guard. And then I was medically retired in 2015 for post-traumatic stress, my back and my knees. Basically, I couldn't do the infantry job anymore, which is what I went to basic training for. Some of the schooling stuff that I've done, I went to sniper school. I went to the Army Mountain Warfare School. I did some small classes like Combat Lifesaver and Javelin and stuff like that, but I wasn't real high speed. Some of the do you want me to talk about like awards and decorations and stuff like that, or?
Sure, if you want to, go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I have my Combat Infantryman's badge. I have a Bronze Star with Valor that I got actually the day that Steve got killed. I have a Purple Heart. I have an Archon with Valor. And then, just all the blanket award kind of stuff, the deployment bit ribbons and all the other kind of fruit salad stuff you get for just showing up and participating.
Sure.
But we do have, from our time when we were under the Marines in Ramadi, we do have a Naval Unit Commendation, which is something that our unit's really proud of. And then underneath our 101st Airborne counterparts when we were in Afghanistan. We actually got the Presidential Unit Citation. The Alpha Company did. That was Stephen Mine's unit. So we've been recognized for our unit as being a pretty valorous unit for our times deployed. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And from what Stephen had told me, throughout, everything, while we were deployed and everything, it seems like you guys were, kind of in the middle of quite a bit over there. So,
that was kind of the running joke, was if it was a fight, send a Alpha Company or send the Mountain Boys. That was kind of the running joke. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and as, I was over there at the same time, and I don't think we had it nearly kind of as bad as you guys did in terms of combat and everything like that. But we all thank you guys for everything that you guys did over there and everything.
Thank you, man, because you were there too, dude.
Thanks. So you mentioned you met Stephen at Norwich back in.
I do it.
03 or 04.
Yeah, I think it was 2004 because he had transferred in he went to Hofstra, didn't he? First.
Yep, that's correct. And, he went to Hofstra
for a year, and I think did he fail out or did he get kicked out for drinking?
Well, the way the story kind of went, with him was
because I never got the full story.
He just kind of, he kind of just wasn't. He wasn't focused on school. He was more into the partying and the everything else.
I gotcha.
And so he came home after I don't know if it was like on a weekend or something. He came home, or maybe that summer or something. And he was like, what, I can't go back there. And he wanted to go to a military school. And at the time, he had no idea about Norwich or which military school. To him, it was kind of irrelevant at that point. He just knew he wanted to go to a military school to kind of get that discipline, and kick his ass in gear, so that he wasn't, doing all that partying and drinking and everything else that was kind of knocking him off course. And so that's kind of where he went there. And one other thing kind of about Stephen, just for people who are listening, we're recording this the day before the anniversary of the 9th anniversary of his death. Wes, when we first talked about setting up a time to record, he said he wanted to do it around this time just to kind of talk about Steve, kind of remember him a little bit too, and so I appreciate that kind of sentiment as well.
Yeah, we lost Steve that day, and we lost Tristan Southworth as well. And actually tomorrow, Jason Smith, who was our platoon sergeant, he and I are doing a thunder run down to Steve's gravesite in Glastonbury, and then we're coming back to do a run up to Morrisville to see Tristan's gravesite as well. So my day tomorrow is going to be a little packed with driving. Yeah, so we're gonna do the thunder run for the boys.
Nice. So, well, we appreciate that they're, obviously not forgotten, and, people are, continuing to, pay their respects and everything. And that's awesome that, all these years later. I didn't get to go last year because I was, we'll get into it, but I was too sick last year. I couldn't go. So this year I'm making a point of going. So. Awesome. Well, so talking a little bit about that, your sickness that you were talking about. I know you've had some health problems kind of stemming from your military service, and would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So January of 2017, I started noticing. I've been having a lot of bowel issues. Loose stools, watery stools, abdominal cramps, nothing crazy. It was uncomfortable. It was kind of annoying. I would eat, dinner or lunch or breakfast, and then literally within 5 minutes, I'd be running for the bathroom. And, the joke was I could clear the firehouse, cause I work as a career firefighter. I could clear the firehouse from the bathroom in the back of the bay. But I was eating, at a meal, the guys used to joke that I had two hollow legs, cause I would eat 5,000 to 10,000 calories in a meal. and I wasn't gaining weight. I wasn't losing weight. I was just eating so much food. And, it was a running joke that you'd have to take a second mortgage out just to feed me on shift. But January of 2017, I'd actually just come back from Ireland. My wife is from Ireland. And I'd come back early because I didn't have that much time to take off. So I'd only gone over for like 2 weeks. And I came into the fire station one night to do what we call coverage. So we have a minimum staffing that's always at the firehouse ready to take on a call. And our minimum staffing right now is 3. So anytime there's only 1 or 2 firefighters in the firehouse, we call somebody in to kind of cover and boost our numbers. So I came in for coverage because my wife is still in Ireland. And I was like, well, I'll come in and just hang out at the firehouse. And I had to go to the bathroom, which, isn't a big deal. But I went into the bathroom and sat down on the toilet, and I had this really awful sounding, smelling kind of thing come out of me. And I was like, boy, the hell was that? So it's kind of gross. So I apologize to your listeners. I kind of went to clean myself up, and when I went to reach for more toilet paper, I had like my hand looked like I had dipped it in a horror movie kind of style pool of blood. And I stood up, turned around and looked, and it looked like somebody had taken an IV bag full of blood, like a blood donation bag, like you would do with the Red Cross, and just dumped it in the toilet. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my God, like, what the fuck? And so I went running out to one of my paramedics, and I was like, Keith, you got to come look at this. And he kind of he was sitting in one of the chairs, and he kind of leans back and he looks at me and he's like, fuck you, bro. I am not going to look at your shit, no matter how big it is. And, he's a lieutenant. I was like, Keith, now. And he was like, whoa. And so he got up, walked into the bathroom, took one look in the toilet, and he was like, get in the fucking ambulance. We are going to the hospital right now. Where I live in Vermont, the VA is actually 10 minutes away from my house, but it's 5 minutes away from the fire station. And they ran me up, and a couple of tests and colonoscopy and blood tests later, I found out that I have stage 4 colon cancer with metastatic spread to my liver. Yeah, so that was in January of 2017. I had literally just finished my probationary year as a fireman. I was in the middle of the process of buying my home. My son was just about to turn 1. I mean, I had everything going right in my life. And then all of a sudden, like, you get this, you get the big C word kind of diagnosis. And, dude, I thought my fucking life was going to fall apart. And so,
sure.
It took a long time for me to kind of come to grips with that. Obviously the title of this podcast is Drive On. So it's kind of hard to take a hit like that and roll yourself back over, kind of wallow in the dirt for a second, let the blood, spit the blood out and kind of, spit whatever loose teeth are down, rolling around in your face from the blow, and then, stand back up. But I had to, because I still needed to provide for my family. My wife is, she's a physical therapist, but she's a stay-at-home mom right now because she wants to take care of our kid. I still have a mortgage. I still have, like car payments and all this other stuff. So I've actually, in between rounds of chemotherapy, I've actually still been working as a career firefighter, which, my doctor looks at me like I have 7 heads, because he doesn't understand. He doesn't understand how I do it. And I mean, you think of most people who have, if you've ever seen somebody on chemotherapy, I mean, they don't look healthy. They look sick. And right now, very fortunately, knock on wood, I'm still very healthy. I'm able to do chemotherapy on a Monday, and I'm usually back in work by Friday, Thursday, the earliest, if my lab counts and stuff are going right. I'm back in work on a Thursday, working full duty as a fireman, which is fucking unheard of.
Right, exactly.
Like, my guys at the firehouse joke that I'm either like a biomechanical freak, like Superman, or fucking Deadpool. They don't know how to take me, dude. But
Yeah.
that's the thing is that, I've had to learn that no matter how hard it is to, get these kind of, and I've had setbacks, like, obviously the cancer it's contained right now. Like, that's the kind of best thing I can hope for, but it's still, it's growing a little bit every time I take a break from chemotherapy. I just did my 36th round of chemotherapy on the 19th of July. I'm scheduled to do round 37 Wednesday. So, I mean, it's been a long, grueling process. So it's yeah.
Gosh. Yeah, and so before we started recording here, we were kind of chatting a little bit about that whole process of kind of picking yourself back up, and it's amazing to see somebody who has the diagnosis that you had, and all the other things going on in life, and how you've sort of managed to kind of pick yourself up and just continue, like you said, to kind of drive on and dust yourself off and keep on going, and not letting something like this get you down or keep you down anyways.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about it, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the stages of cancer. So stage 1 is typically like early diagnosis. They might be a small cell cluster, or like a small tumor. Stage 2 usually means like for colon cancer, like stage 1 is like a polyp. Stage 2 means that it's a polyp that's kind of gone into the intestinal wall, but not all the way through full thickness. Stage 3 is when it's kind of gone full thickness through the intestinal wall and maybe affected some of the lymph nodes around it. And then stage 4 is when it is actually transplanted throughout your body, which is what they call metastasizing or metastasis. And so depending on, the different types of cancer that you can get, typically, if you look at colon cancer, the survival rate for stage 1, because obviously it's early detection, the survivability rate's like, 75 to 90%. Stage 2, the after 5 years. So stage 2, the survivability rate is, anywhere between 50 to 75%, roughly, give or take. Because obviously if it's progressed, into the wall, they don't know how much it's progressed. Stage 3 is kind of, that borderline of 25 to 50% survivability after 5 years, because if it's gone stage 3 and it's permeated the wall and into the lymph nodes, then obviously there's a chance that it's spread somewhere else. And then stage 4 is essentially a death sentence. It's your survivability rate after 5 years is less than 10%. Now, granted, if you look at those statistics, it's typically in people who are much older than I am. I'm 33, 34. I just turned 34. So I was diagnosed at 31, 32, because I've been fighting it for 2 years. So my survivability rate might be a little different because I'm younger, and doctors can give me a much higher dose of chemotherapy than they can in their stereotypical patient who is 50, 60, 70, who they can't kind of blast with all this chemotherapy, and then they can't recover as quickly as I can, so they have to kind of lower the dose each time they kind of give it to them, not to make the patient too sick. So I've been pretty fortunate in that aspect. But yeah,
sure, absolutely.
Essentially, stage 4, I got handed a death sentence. And
I knew somebody who recently, within the last couple of years now, went through pretty heavy doses of chemotherapy, and they were only able to go through that just because of the fact that they were so healthy to begin with, outside of the cancer that they had. So, the higher dose, and they're cancer free now,
awesome.
and so the high dose really worked. So hopefully continuing is it'll help prolong what you're going through.
And so unfortunately, my cancer was tied to the burn pits that we were all exposed to while serving overseas in, Iraq and Afghanistan. And, for any of your guests that served, Horn of Africa or anything like that, the Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, everywhere that trash was burned is considered an open airborne hazard registry area, or burn pit area. And I actually went down to Dana-Farber, and the leading doctor at Dana-Farber for gastrointestinal cancers basically wrote the letter that service connected me to the burn pit, saying that, for my age and my as aggressive type of form of cancer that I have, there's no way that I would have gotten this any other way than being exposed to the burn pits. So if you, right. The guests that are listening, if any of them are military veterans that have served over in Iraq and Afghanistan, the only thing I would ask is please, go onto the VA website, find the Open Airborne Hazards Registry burn pit registry, and sign up. It's not necessarily going to get you service connection. You can request a medical appointment at the very end of it for any sort of health issues that you're having, but it's a data collection point, because I think, unfortunately, that this burn pits is going to be our generation's Agent Orange. We're already starting to see veterans who are passing away from really strange types of cancer that wouldn't typically happen to people their age group. I take, for example, me, stage 4 colon cancer. There's no fucking way that a 30-something-year-old who's perfectly healthy otherwise gets stage 4 colon cancer without being exposed to something.
Right.
Vermont has lost 2 high-ranking Brigadier General Mike Heston and Sergeant Major Mike Graham to cancer, and their families were actually part of a piece of legislation that I just helped. I testified on behalf of. But we just had it passed that the VA in Vermont now has to contact every Vermont veteran who served overseas and tell them that they may have been exposed to these burn pits and that their health could be compromised. And it's the only legislation of its type in the United States currently. And I was a part of that. So I'm actually really proud of that, being a part of that. But June Heston, whose husband, Brigadier General Mike Heston, passed away from pancreatic cancer, she has really been spearheading it, and I've been very fortunate to be able to work with her and get the word out. But if you got veterans that are listening to this podcast, that's the only thing that I would recommend is, if you have any sort of health issue, please get it checked out. Don't let it sit and fester. If you have a cough that you haven't been able to shake for a year, please just go to the doctor and push until they finally do everything, exhaust every option to ensure that it's not something that's, basically like me. I'd complained to the VA for years that I was having all these issues with my stomach, with my guts, and they kept telling me, oh, it's, irritable bowel syndrome, or, oh, you have Crohn's disease. I never had a colonoscopy. No one ever did, any sort of real deep testing until I quite literally shit a bucket of blood. And that's unfortunate, because now I'm facing a really shitty outcome from that. So.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate, but you sort of need to be your own advocate, with regards to your healthcare. And I've had a similar, not similar to the degree of, the type of diagnosis or whatever, but just, a misdiagnosis, where I went to the VA because I was having breathing trouble, at one point, and, they said it was anxiety or stress or something like that was causing it. And so they gave me anxiety medication to help with it. After getting a second opinion and kind of looking into it on my own, which, by the way, I never took any of the medication that they prescribed me because I knew it wasn't that. The only thing I was stressed about at the time was the fact that I couldn't breathe. And so that told me that there was something wrong there. I looked into it, and it turns out like certain kinds of like heartburn or like acid reflux kind of things could have symptoms of feeling like you're short of breath and stuff like that. So like what I needed was like a antacid or something like that, like a Tums or whatever to get rid of that.
And they prescribe you
as opposed to
anti-anxiety medication.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, I just, at that point I knew like I had to be my own advocate for this type of stuff because, they spent 15 minutes kind of with me, and they were, checking, certain vital signs and stuff like that. And they were like, oh yeah, it must be something else. And I knew it wasn't what they were saying it was. It was just probably like the most common issue that they see with people with the symptoms that I had, and they probably just threw me into that bucket. And
that's the bad thing with the VA, man, is that I use the joke that they delay, deny, and hope you die because they just don't want to. If they can't fix you with a prescription bottle full of pills, then they don't want to deal with you. Is the mentality that I get from a lot of VA visits that I do, or that I had. Now that I've kind of gotten as sick as I am, as young as I am, people have started to kind of take notice when I say, "Hey, I'm not feeling good." People tend to like what? And so,
sure.
For a long time, man, it was I would walk into the VA and I would tell my primary care doctor, like, "Hey, listen, I'm experiencing severe abdominal cramps. Like, what is going on? You need to do something." And she would, "Oh no, it's probably just your IBS." Like, at the time I would be like, "Oh, okay. Well, you're the doctor. I'm not the doctor. So you know better." And then after a while, like, nothing was working. Like, none of the medication they were prescribing was helping. None of the stuff was working. And I finally just said, you know what? Like, I guess I just have to live with this for the how ironic, the rest of my life. And so it turned out to be that because I didn't push and I didn't advocate because I didn't know that it's turned, unfortunately, rather serious. So
right. And still, kind of going back to this, still despite all of this, kind of the bad diagnosis that you have now, and the outcome that you're experiencing here, you still have a positive attitude throughout the whole thing, which I think to me is the most important part, is because you're still able to carry on and pick yourself back up, and that's just amazing to see that.
I've had to learn that, so again, like I work as a full-time fireman. If you're not getting fucked with at the firehouse, then we don't like you. And the guys, when I first got diagnosed, everybody was kind of like, "Oh my God, like, what do we say to them?" And for a couple of days, guys kind of walked on eggshells. Like, they didn't know how to approach me. They didn't know how to talk to me. And it actually helped. We had we built a small dollhouse out of plywood to work out fire behavior. And it was like 2 weeks after I had been diagnosed, and I had already started chemotherapy. It was like the week of my first round of chemotherapy. And so we were out back, doing this dollhouse, and what you do is you light like one corner of the dollhouse on fire with some sticks and some stuff, and then you like open these little sliders and see how fire flows and travels through a house. And it's a way to learn fire behavior, and how if you ventilate one certain window, you can actually pull fire. If you close it, you can, or leave it closed, you can actually trap fire. And so it's starting to put off a lot of smoke, and the assistant chief kind of looks at me and he's like, "Wesley, you shouldn't be breathing this stuff in." And I finally looked at him and I was like, "What's it going to do, Chief? Give me fucking cancer?" And everybody was like, "Oh, he made a joke. Oh, he made a joke. Oh shit, we can make jokes." And so like instantly the floodgates opened, and but I've had to kind of take on that, and granted, I do have a very serious diagnosis. At some point cancer is going to win the fight. But it's going to take me to the ground, and I'm going to be a bloody fucking mess before it wins. But I've had to accept that, no matter what, I still have my wife, I still have my son, I still have my brothers in the fire service and the military that, these guys look at me, not as an example, but these guys aren't used to dealing with people who have cancer. We are in the terms of like treating patients, like transporting them from the home to the hospital because they're really sick or because they're actually dying. But these guys, my guys don't deal with people with cancer all the time. And seeing, I have to put on that kind of brave face and that, strong armor and be like, hey, you know what? Like, yeah, sure, man, I got fucking cancer, but it's not going to fucking beat me. And so I've had to for my sanity, for their sanity, because if they're miserable at work, then I'm going to be miserable at work. And if I'm miserable at work, I can't do my job. And if I can't do my job, then I start focusing on other things. So I've had work as a way to distract myself from the more serious issue that I'm kind of looking at, which has been very, really helpful. Because, I've had something else to focus my energy on besides the fact that, I'm sick. Like, I don't have time to sit and wallow in my misery because, hey man, I got to work at 24 tomorrow, or, hey, I'm scheduled to work 12 hours of overtime tomorrow night. Like, I don't have time to sit and wallow in pity, plus I have a 3-year-old. Like my kid he's always wanting to get up. He's always wanting to run around. He wants to be outside. He wants to be at the playground. Like, my weeks of chemotherapy, like, I'm not feeling great, but like, how do you tell a 3-year-old that like, no, we can't go to the park today. Like, daddy doesn't feel good. You can't do that. You gotta stand up. You gotta be a man. You gotta be a father, or you gotta be a woman. You gotta be a mom, and take your kid to do what your kid wants, because that's how you build good memories for your kid and your family. And so I've had to, in a sense, grow up really, really fast in that aspect of, like, I have to have that mental toughness. I have to have that intestinal fortitude that even when I'm sick as fuck, bro, like, I could be fucking puking in the toilet and 10 minutes later my kid's like, Dad, outside? And it's like, yeah, bro, yep, let's go. You want to go outside? Let's go. And I may only last 5 or 10 minutes, but, at least, my kid says, Dad, come on. And it's like, all right, let's go, buddy. You want to go outside, or you want to go in your room and play trucks, or, you want to do whatever. Like, I'm there to be there for you as your dad. So.
And, those 5 or 10 minutes that you might last are, something super funny or something, whatever, has that opportunity to happen. And then that's that little thing that kind of sticks in the back of his mind, as he gets older, and we'll think back to remember that. And it won't necessarily be, Dad just, kind of crashing on the couch, or, in bed, or, whatever, because you didn't feel like getting up. And so those types of memories are the things that will, kind of help, in the future, help him to kind of, remember you in a positive light, and all that kind of stuff. Thinking back on childhood memories, and I think that's kind of the same for anybody. But it's good to kind of have that foresight to see how he's gonna think about you and things like that.
I write my son an email every day. Some days I try to every day. Some days I don't get to it because I'm not feeling great, or some days I don't get to it because I'm just tired. But, I try to write my son an email every day. And the way I write it to him is like I'm sitting there having a dad talk. I like I'm actually sitting at the kitchen table having a conversation with my son. And I've tried to kind of figure out, what age that I think I want him to have access to this this website, or this email account. So I've spoken to my wife about it, and she and I have actually talked that probably the right age would be about 14 or 15. And the reason why is because I mean, I'm very blunt when I write. Tomorrow is the 9-year anniversary. I'm going to write him an email about exactly how I feel about things that happened that day. Other days when I've lost friends, Other days when significant events happened in my military career or my fire career, if I have a bad call, I write to my son about it and I talk to him about it. And I do that because I want my son to understand who I am. This terminal diagnosis, and I say that, I could live, cancer treatments are becoming more and more advanced and people are living longer and longer. The statistics say what they say, but they're not, nobody's fits in a statistic. So I could live another 4 years. I could live another 10 years. I could live another 15, 20 years. But on the off chance that I don't live that long, knock on wood, I want my son to have a way that I communicate to him and that he knows who I am, who I was as a person. If I'm not there to teach him these lessons, I try to tell him how that, as a person, I want him to be a good person. If somebody needs help, you go and help that person. You don't kick somebody when they're down. That's the kind of morals and values that I want to instill in my son. And, obviously I would love to instill those in him myself, but in the off chance that I'm not able to, that's why I use this email account as a way to talk to him. And I talk about current events, and I talk to him about things that are going on in the world at my time. Like I wrote him in and talked about Hong Kong the other day and how Hong Kong is actually going through, for lack of a better term, a political revolution. And I said that this is what freedom is, man. Is for you to be able to stand up to your government and say, no, we're not gonna take you dictating to us how it's gonna be. We are the people that you represent, or you are supposed to take care of. You can't just treat us the way you do. And so I use current events to talk to him about things, and I try to relate messages into him. And but that's the only thing that I can kind of do to ensure that the values that I would want instilled in my son are instilled in him. And I do it through an email. So, but
I've heard of people who have done that before, where they'll set up an email account for their kids, and they'll just write an email to them every either every day or every week or month or whatever, or anytime anything significant happens. And I think that's kind of a cool idea to do, where you can be sending this stuff even if you have no health problems and no terminal diagnosis or anything like that. Like, you never know, you might get hit by a bus tomorrow or something, or
Well, and I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea for maybe for veterans to do if they have kids. This might be a way for them to communicate with their children and explain why dad has always kind of had the boogeyman on his shoulder, or dad doesn't like crowds, dad doesn't like fireworks, dad doesn't like driving with stuff on the side of the road, or dad doesn't like to use guns anymore, or whatever the reason, or and I say dad, but because I'm a man, but it could be the same thing for women too. But it may be a way for people to be able to communicate, not just as a therapy, but as a way to communicate to their children. Because you can be completely honest in an email, and then you don't have to think about it for 4, 5, 10 years if you don't want to, and then all of a sudden you hand it to your kid and say, here, this is yours. I want you to read this. I want you to go through it, and then if you have questions, I want you to come to me. And that's kind of another way that I think has been very therapeutic for me, because I write exactly how I feel about things, about the loss of my friends, about the horrible things that I saw in combat, the poverty, the famine, the horrible living conditions. the lack of education and some of the stuff that we tried to do to fix those that were met with some acceptance, some obviously graciousness. And then obviously we had some people that rejected it and met it with, extreme opposition. I don't want my son growing up with rose-colored glasses, thinking that the world is this, happy-go-lucky place and that everybody gets along and nobody fights, and because unfortunately violence is a very real issue in the world, and we've been very fortunate in this country that we haven't had to deal with it on a daily basis like countries like Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan and some of the parts of Africa, and even now in the South America. There's horrible things that go on in this world, and unfortunately a lot of, and I'm sure you see it on Facebook and Instagram, I did it for the gram kind of style poses, and people are more concerned with how many likes and shares and retweets they got as opposed to what's going on around them. And I think veterans have that unique perspective because we've seen that. We know how awful things can be because we've seen it. We've lived in it. We fought in it. We tried to fix it. And I think that's another reason why when we come home, there's such a detachment for veterans between us and other civilians, because we just don't understand how I can come literally 48 hours ago. I was carrying a rifle in Afghanistan. I land, I'm happy to be home. And the first thing I do is I see, this young girl driving down the street, like snapping selfies with her phone as she's driving. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Because, she's just doing it for the gram, and we're sitting there going, oh my God, like, you don't understand how dangerous what you're doing is. You are literally going to kill somebody. And it's tough because all we want to do is go over and fix the problem. And, and we can't. We have to be restrained. We can't use violence and aggression like we did 48 hours ago in Afghanistan to fix a problem. We can't use that here stateside. People don't understand that.
And one of the things I think a lot of guys and gals that come back where they, like you said, they did use violence and aggression to fix problems. Someone is approaching too close or whatever, and you knock them out, or you're shoving a gun in their face and everything. Like, you can't do that here. Like, it's just not how things work. Like, it did work, and it was highly effective, like you said, 48 hours ago or whenever, however long ago it was that you were overseas, and it was a very effective method of dealing with some of these problems. But you can do those things when you get back. And so I think a lot of guys and ladies, when they get back, they have trouble figuring out how to deal with those problems that they see, those, whether they're inconveniences or whatever the case may be, that just these things that happen that they want to try to fix, and they just don't know how to deal with that anymore. And I think that's kind of a problem that a lot of people end up with.
Well, and I think too, especially because we were infantry, like that's what we did, and so the way we fixed problems was through sheer violence, aggression, and taking things by force. That's how we solved problems. And I use the analogy of sheepdogs, and wolves. The average person, if you will, is a sheep. They just go about their day. They're not really concerned with what happens around them unless it immediately affects them. But they're afraid of the wolf, right? The wolf comes in and, hurts them. You can use a wolf for any kind of analogy, whether it's, a bad person or a bad event. And so who protects the sheep from the wolf, right? The sheepdog.
Right.
And the sheepdog reminds the sheep too much of the wolf because the sheepdog has teeth. The sheepdog has scars and, looks kind of bloodied and mangled because what does the sheepdog do? The sheepdog fights the wolf. And so in a lot of terms, when we come home from combat, and I use this as an analogy as well, it's like taking a dog fighting dog, right? If you want to use the example of a pit bull, imagine your average U.S. infantry grunt is a pit bull. You have trained this pit bull for nothing else. And don't get me wrong, I love pit bulls. I think pit bulls are a fantastic breed. I'm just using them as an example. I don't think pit bulls are a problem. But you have trained this dog to do nothing else but fight. And you've put it in a couple of fights, and this dog has won. It has probably gotten bloodied. It has probably gotten its ass handed to it, but it is fought, and that's all it knows how to do. And then all of a sudden, you take this fighting dog and you shove it back into the kennel with all these other regular dogs, and you tell it, okay, you're done fighting. Don't fight another dog. and it's like, you can't do that to a dog, let alone, people expect combat veterans to come home and not try and use the skills that they needed to survive aggression, violence, intimidation, use of force. All of a sudden, when we come back into stateside, because 48 hours ago, that was the way we survived. Mm-hmm. Now, all of a sudden, 48 hours later, we're driving down, I live on the East Coast, so I'm driving down I-95, and some fuckhead cuts me off. Well, 48 hours ago, my response would have been, that dude's trying to block me into an ambush. I'm going to ram this motherfucker. Exactly. I can't do that now. I have to use my horn. I have to maybe root for one, and then I have to maybe yell through the steering column. But I can't physically do what my natural response would be, because it's a learned, conditioned response. I can't do that here in the States, and I think that's where a lot of veterans run into trouble, is because they can't. Once that switch is turned on, it's very, very hard to switch that off. It is. It takes a long time of consciously making efforts to switch it off. And once it's switched off, it only takes one incident to switch it back on full bore. Right. And it could be something small like getting cut off in traffic, or I've had a couple of incidents, like a couple of days ago I was at Best Buy, and it was raining. There was a woman who had parked on her right on the doorway because her elderly mother was in the car, and she was trying to let her out. And I get it. Like, she didn't want grandma to walk in the rain too far, right? But she's blocking the entire road. So like, I go to swerve around her and go past, and I'm sitting there going like, you're a fucking idiot. And this woman comes around the back of the car with the walker, and like raises her hand at me like, what the fuck are you doing? And I had a high speed come apart. Like, I rolled my window down and I was like, what the fuck? And not the most professional thing to do. Sure. It was one of those things like, lady, you are blocking a lane of traffic. You are going to cause an accident because what you are trying to do, while it is convenient for you, it is not convenient for 99 other people. I understand it's your world. I'm just fucking living in it, but I would like to live in it peacefully, and you're not allowing me to do that. Yeah. And so, but I've had to learn to, all right, man, like you said what you said, drive away. But it's hard, dude. It's very hard to not like want to just go fucking bananas at somebody. And I've had to do a lot of therapy, a lot of counseling to get used to that.
Yeah. So. And I've talked about this before, where you'll come back and you'll see people who are like bitching and complaining about their Starbucks order wasn't right or something like that, and it's like, who cares?
It drives me fucking crazy.
Like, who cares? But I've kind of learned to look at it like this, like, because they don't have worries of cars exploding next to them, because they don't have worries of terrorists coming in and shooting up the place, or RPGs coming flying in from God knows where, or airplanes flying into buildings, they can bitch about these things. And so
Yeah.
I feel like because none of that bad shit's happening, they aren't worried about those things. So I kind of feel like, job well done. We kept the wolf over there, going back to that, the sheepdog kind of analogy. We kept them outside of, their area, and they don't have to worry about it anymore. And so
it's all a matter of perspective, man, because, our perspective, obviously, like you said, fighting that wolf, we've learned that we have a different perspective. Like, we would go days without a shower, right? Like that's gross. It's disgusting. Like, you smell like, for lack of a better term, you smell like balls, and it's not pleasant, right? Or you might have gone a couple of days without chow because of a convoy snafu, or like your convoy got ambushed and the little combat outpost you're on didn't get food that day, or didn't get the food delivery. So like now you're eating MREs instead of hot chow, which, for an infantry guy, like that sucks. Like, you look forward to hot chow, you look forward to mail, you look forward to this stuff. And so when we don't get it, that's an inconvenience, right? Not getting hot chow, that's inconvenient, but we still had chow. So we still got to eat. We didn't go to bed hungry. We didn't starve to death. Okay, you didn't get mail for a couple of days. It's inconvenient, right? So when we come home and, Misty in front of us gets her fucking order wrong at Starbucks, and she complains because her fucking triple soy moi latte macchiato whatever is a vende instead of a grande. Like, we tend to be like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you have the money to be at a Starbucks and you ordered like a half-calf macchiato triple soy latte, and you didn't get it right, and that's what you're going to have a high-speed come apart over? That's your fucking moment of the day, huh? And so, and I see it too in perspectives of firefighting. Like, we show up on somebody's worst day. It could be a motor vehicle accident. It could be, a fire. It could be any number of instances, but we show up on somebody's worst day, and they don't expect two dumb fucks in a pickup truck. They expect 4 brain surgeons that are, triathletes and, ex models to show up and fix all their problems. But when we've done these horrible incidences and really genuinely taken care of people, we get these people who come to appreciate that, there are people out there that are willing to put their lives on the line to save them. And it's not that I don't think a lot of people appreciate or don't appreciate soldiers, fire, police, EMS, dispatchers, but I think people have lost perspective as to what really constitutes somebody to be a hero and role model after. And instead, you have people like Kim Kardashian and Kanye West, who have become, or even, what's the other peckerhead that's been really mouthy in the news lately? Oh God, I can't think of his name. He's another Hollywood type, but they're calling for, there's literally too many to mention, but they're calling for, all these political actions because they think that their voice carries some sort of significance. They're crying out for justice and reform, and they want all these things. And I kind of sit there and go, what the fuck have you done for anybody other than yourself? What the fuck have you done? Okay, sure, maybe you've started a charity to help, I don't know, inner city kids learn music, which is a fantastic program. That's a wonderful program. I'm not taking something away from that. But what have you done that has truly been selfless? Where have you put basically your ass on the line to help somebody else? Instead, you are you are trying to fix a problem by throwing fucking money at it, and that's not how things get done. And we're starting to see it with the programs in our government. And as a veteran, I tend to lose my mind and I get upset when people just don't appreciate those who wear a badge, carry a rifle, or carry a handgun, or carry an EMT or a medic bag, or dispatch somebody to help them when they're in trouble. Everybody takes police officers and fire and EMS and the military for granted until, guess what? It's time for them to fucking show up at your door.
Yeah, until you need them, right? So that guy's breaking in your door or whatever because there's somebody a home invasion or something like that. Like that's when you need the police, and just 24 hours earlier you were F the police and everything else, and that doesn't fly.
And I get so upset because everybody thinks that the police are brutal or they're this Gestapo kind of force that's being utilized against the American populace. Well, they're trying to do a job. I work with police officers every single day, man. They are people in a tough position trying to do a hard job. And I had a woman complain to me in the back of the ambulance one day about how the cop had treated her poorly or whatever. She had overdosed on heroin, and she was pissed that the cop had been rude to her. And she was like, "I'm going to get that motherfucker fired." And I sat there and I was like, hold on a second. Just stop for a second. That you're mad because that police officer you felt was rude to you, and because he stopped you from overdosing, so he gave you Narcan, right, which took away your high, so you're probably pissed about that. But now you have basically the stones to sit here and say that you're going to get him fired for doing his job. Well, you know what? If you don't like it, why don't you go to the police academy? Why don't you become a police officer? And why don't you fix it? And she was like, well, I can't do that. And I'm like, well, then don't argue with it. If you're not willing to do it, then don't sit here and tell me, the system needs to change. Well, the only way the system changes is if you get involved in the system. And once you get involved in the system, guess what? You realize, holy shit, there's a lot of people that I don't like.
Exactly. So, well, kind of on that topic of change and everything, with all the stuff that we talked about earlier with the burn pits and all the other stuff, what do you think, the Army, the DOD, VA, whoever it should be, in your opinion, what would be a good step for them to take to kind of do things to prevent stuff like, what happened to you from kind of happening in the future?
Boy, that's a really good question, man. Because I'll be honest with you. I mean, and this was part of the stuff that I did in testifying against, for the legislation that Vermont did, I should say. June Heston had a letter that she had gotten a hold of that says that in 2006 to 2014, there were 14 or 19 incinerators, right? Like garbage incinerators that were shipped to Iraq, specifically to burn trash, eliminate trash, and reduce or eliminate toxic pollution. None of them were used because no one knew how to install them. No one knew how to hook them up. No one knew where to put them, and no one knew how to use them. So you have these multi-million-dollar incinerator units basically sitting somewhere in an airfield collecting fucking dust because no one knew how to read the fucking instruction manual. So when somebody asked me, how do we affect change, right? So I was on a little combat outpost in Afghanistan called Cop Herrera, and 100 yards outside of our front gate was our burn pit. And we would have a local national come in. He would collect up all the trash every day. He would take it out to the burn pit. He would throw it all in a pile, cover it all up with diesel fuel, and light it on fire. And if you were the poor sucker that was standing fucking gate guard that day, guess what you did for an hour and a half? You breathed nothing but trash fumes. Yep. And there was everything in there, man. All of our, like, you know how much trash Joe generates, right?
Mm-hmm.
He can make, you know, he's the only guy I know that has a brand new computer. It gets a crack in the screen. He's like, fuck it, I'm going to throw this away and go buy a new one. And, you know, like, it gets thrown in the trash, gets sent out to the trash bin, and guess what? Like, that gets lit on fire. And now you're breathing in battery acid. You're breathing in all of the medical stuff that the little combat aid station has had. You know, if they've been treating patients, it's, you know, all their biomedical waste. It's all the food waste. It's, you know, batteries, plastic, anything and everything that could burn, metals, chemicals, right? Mm-hmm. So we know that this stuff is like, if you imagine a structure fire, right? Because I'm a firefighter. If you imagine a structure fire, all the stuff in your home is either made from synthetic material or maybe some natural material, but it's probably all glue board and, you know, linoleum laminate or wood floor laminates that's been coated with a polyurethane kind of look. But it's all this stuff that when it burns, it puts out these really toxic chemicals. And so we in the fire service know that this is the stuff that's giving firefighters cancer. Mm-hmm. And so it only magnifies, and we wear protective equipment when we go into these environments. Like, we're not breathing this shit in direct, or trying not to. But when we were standing gate guard in Afghanistan, that's all we had to do was stand a gate, and like, literally you would be standing there choking, getting basically kicked out of the gate tower because you couldn't breathe, you couldn't see, your eyes were watering, your nose was running, and you're coughing because you're breathing this shit in. Chemicals that are known carcinogens. And so when I say, you know, when people ask, you know, what is there anything that we can do to change? I don't know if there really is in countries like Iraq and Afghanistan, because they don't subscribe to the same rules and regulations that we do here in the States, right? There is no, I never saw one single EPA agency representative in Afghanistan. Right. Despite all my time, and I never saw one in Iraq either. You know, despite all my time serving in the Middle East, I never once ran into an EPA official. But, you know, the only way that these people get rid of, you know, and I say these people, I mean Iraqis and Afghans, get rid of their trash is they burn it. And so that's the only option they have. And up until probably 60 years ago, that's how most Americans got rid of their trash. And there's still some, I live in Vermont now, there's still some rural woodchucks that's how they get rid of their trash, is they bring it out back to a little holler, throw it over the bank, and light it on fire. Right. You know, because they don't have a dump that's quick access for them. And so I don't really know if there is a genuine, effective way to not expose our servicemen and women that are fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan and Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and the Horn of Africa, if there isn't a way to not expose them to these really toxic chemicals. I think there's ways that we can minimize it, but I don't know if we can completely eliminate it. Unfortunately, I really do think that burn pit exposure is going to be our generation's Agent Orange. You know, that we saw it with all the Vietnam guys, right? Everybody thought that Agent Orange, the defoliant, was this great thing because it cleared out all these large swaths of land. You know, do you remember the movie Platoon, when the guys are standing out there and the Agent Orange comes flying over them and they're all standing there looking up, licking the mist because they're like, oh, it feels so great. I mean, that's stuff that was deadly toxic.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, it's the same way now. Like, I have friends that I've made through the process of this legislation bill that are Vietnam veterans, and they told me stories of how they would be sitting in the middle of the fucking jungle, and a KC-130 would come flying over the top of them, dropping Agent Orange, and they'd be eating a sea rat, and they would, you know, get this film, this oily film from the Agent Orange over the top of their food in their sea rat can, and they would literally scoop it out, throw it away, and continue eating. Right?
Ugh. Right.
And then we're wondering why Vietnam veterans are dying of cancer, diabetes, all these other like things that most people don't get until they're in later stages of life. Vietnam veterans were coming home in the, if they had fought in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, they were dying from, type 2 diabetes, that most people don't develop until they're in their late stages of life, in their 50s or 60s, because they've just been generally eating like crap and their body can't do it. These were young, healthy 30-year-olds that were dying of diabetes or pancreatic cancer or lymphoma or all these other conditions because of the links to Agent Orange. And the government for years tried to deny and say, it's not Agent Orange. You're not, like, it's not us. We didn't do it. And the Department of Defense is doing the same thing right now with burn pits. And the reason why is because they know if they admit that they are culpable for it, it would literally bankrupt the Department of Defense to treat every U.S. veteran, every U.S. combat veteran that has served where these burn pits were an exposure, to treat them, to early diagnose, and to take care of them. It would not only bankrupt the VA, it would probably bankrupt the Department of Defense.
Right.
And so their solution is delay, deny, and hope you die. Because if you die, then you don't fight. You're not fighting them to take care of you.
And it doesn't cost any more at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's hard, and I definitely, as a veteran who's been over there, we had a burn pit on our fob as well, and I was exposed to some of that stuff too. I'm on the burn pit registry that you talked about earlier, but it's hard because, like, what else do you do with it? They don't have landfills there where you can send the trash off to and have it dumped in there or anything like that. It's just
right. It's
the same way of life. And so what do you do? I guess the only option at that point is to just burn it. And it sort of sucks. And I can see from the, the government, whichever agency you want to point at, I can see from their point of view too, is like, how do they handle that? They only have so much funding, and what are they realistically supposed to do? And I'm not sure. I don't know if I have a better answer than you on that either. To see what people are supposed to actually do about any of that. But I think taking health concerns seriously and not just kind of writing them off as you must have a sore throat or something like that because you're coughing all the time or whatever. To not just write it off as something minor, actually take the time to maybe look into it and run a couple tests that might show, what someone might actually have, that might be a step in the right direction at least.
Yeah.
But, that's just one guy's opinion, I guess. So what advice would you have for somebody who's maybe considering joining the military? Like, is there anything that you would have wished someone would have told you before you joined?
Join the Air Force.
Nice.
I joke, but it's funny because I actually come from a very long line of military men on my father and mother's side of the family. My father and I all served. My brother was at Capoeira with me in Afghanistan, which never should have fucking happened. But he was there.
We had a couple sets of brothers on the same base.
Yeah,
in our
never should have fucking happened. After the Sullivan brothers died on the Arizona and Pearl Harbor, the U.S. government made a law that siblings do not serve in the same assignment, let alone the same typically theater of operations, or if they are in the same theater of operations, they're under different commands. And so my brother being right on the same base did wonders for my parents in relieving their stress, but
right.
It didn't do anything to relieve mine or his stress, because every time I would go on a mission or he would go on a mission, one of us would be sitting in the talk listening intently, and actually worked out negatively. The 22nd of August 2010, when we got ambushed, because my brother was sitting in the talk listening, and when everything started to kind of go down, he was kicked out of the talk by the first sergeant, thankfully, because the first sergeant was paying attention and realized what platoon exactly it was that was getting ambushed, and told my brother to leave, because if my name came across the radio, he didn't want my brother to find out that way. And so, it's I do cherish the fact that he was on the same base as me, but at the same time, I can't believe somebody in a chain of command somewhere didn't sit there and say, "Hold up."
Sure. Yeah.
But so if I was to give advice to anybody going into the military, I started to tell a story about a long line of military family, but if I was to give advice to anybody going into the military, I would say, if you truly wish to serve, if that is something that you want to do, and this is an email that I've actually sent to my son. I won't ever discourage my son from serving. Again, like I said, my father, my brother, and I served. My grandfather served during Vietnam. He was assigned stateside. Unfortunately, he didn't get to go. Well, fortunately for him, unfortunately for him, if you ask him, he didn't deploy to Vietnam. He was assigned stateside. And then his father actually jumped into St. Mary Glee with the 82nd and fought all the way through Europe. So I come from a very long line of military tradition on my father's side, and my mother's father was a P-38 pilot during World War II. He had immigrated from Ireland, decided he wanted to help, and joined the Royal Army Air Corps and flew P-38s. So my son is not expected to serve. I don't expect my son to join the military. I do expect my son to serve his community in some fashion. If he doesn't want to join the military, then that's fine, but he should become a firefighter or a police officer or a dispatcher. Like, he should be, or some other fashion of a community supporter. Because I think that the only way that people can genuinely make things better is if they serve others before themselves. So right. If I was to give advice to anybody going into the military, my first thing would say, are you doing it for the right reason? Are you doing it because you genuinely want to be there, or are you doing it because it's your last option? If it's your last option, then, pick a skill set that's going to give you something to do after the military. Go in and become trained up in IT or communications, or, give yourself something that when you get out of the military, you have a skill set, you have training that you can then turn around and say, the military trained me how to do this. I know how to do this. They gave me a skill set. They gave me a way to put food on my table. If you genuinely want to be there, and depending on what you want to do, if you really want to serve in a combat zone, you want to do the whole airborne ranger, special forces, Navy SEAL, whatever you want to do, if that's genuinely what you want to do, then my advice would be, you better take a deep, hard look at what you want to do, because those jobs, those combat operations jobs, they will hold a mirror up to you and show you exactly who you are. Combat shows you exactly who you are. You will either shine in combat, or you will fall apart. And there is no in between. There really is. No. I was very fortunate. I served with a lot of men, because traditionally infantry is all men. I served with a lot of men that were very, very good in a firefight. I did not serve with very many that were not. That to me has been a credit of the unit, the mountain unit that I was assigned to. But I would say to somebody wanting to go in, if you really want to, if you want to put your stuff on the table and measure it up, you better be ready, because combat is not forgiving. It is scary. It is intense. It is terrifying. It is hours and hours and hours of boredom and moments of sheer terror. And if you are willing to accept that, and you feel like you're ready and you can do that, then by all means, pick up a rifle and go join a combat infantry unit or combat unit and go do the whole airborne ranger and, special forces or Navy SEALs or whatever you want to do. If you want to be that member of the elite, then that's what you need to do. But you need to take a good hard look at yourself before you decide, because the last thing you want to do is figure out you're in the wrong spot in the middle of a firefight, that you shouldn't be where you are. So
exactly. That is way too late at that point.
Yeah. So that would be my I guess advice to somebody wanting to go in is, if you genuinely want to go in, I support anybody that wants to put a uniform on and serve their country. I am so proud of anybody that wants to do that, because it really is a select rare breed of a person that wants to do it. And it's an even smaller select rare breed of those of us who become infantry and want to fight, or combat arms and want to fight. And, it's very, very enlightening the first time you realize that the bullets are going both ways. It's scary. It's scary the first time you realize somebody's actually genuinely trying to kill you. It's terrifying.
Yeah, when it's not just little green men on a range that you shoot and they fall down. And,
man, the first time I ever had a insurgent blow an IED at my vehicle, I was in Iraq, and actually it was right about this time frame. Actually, it was the 20th of August in 2005, and it was the first time I ever got ambushed with an IED. And thankfully, he blew it too early. It blew in front of our vehicle by about 50 yards. A little closer, probably 25 yards. But it, kind of bubbled up the asphalt and blew a bunch of asphalt into the air. And I ducked down, thankfully, because I was in the turret. I had enough time to duck down. I didn't get a face full of asphalt. And, I kind of was like, holy fuck, like, somebody just tried to fucking kill us. And Scott Mathewson, my squad leader, kind of looks at me and he goes, "You all right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why?" And he goes, "Well, good. Get up there and start fucking shooting." And so, like, I finally realized, like, oh shit, like, this is real. And it's a terrifying thought. Like, had that person just waited another 5 seconds, not even, we would have been right on top of that bomb. And, it's terrifying to realize that somebody you don't even know, like, you've never met them, wants to kill you based off of an ideology. Like, that is genuinely scary. And I don't know if a lot of people who enlist in the military, I mean, I think they're aware of that fact, but they're not ready to understand that fact. And that would be something, that's what I've tried to convey to my son in emails is, if you want to do this, man, you better be ready.
Well, I think that's great advice and great, information to pass on to, the future ranks of the military, the people who are, maybe juniors, seniors in high school, kind of considering a military career or whatever. I think that's, great advice. To have,
and join the Air Force.
Yes, and join the Air Force because their chow is way better.
Way better.
Thanks for listening to the Drive On Podcast. If you want to check out more episodes or learn more about the show, you can visit our website, driveonpodcast.com, or on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Drive On Podcast.